Let's take a realistic T7 reading practice test together. In this video, we're going to go over a complete practice reading section, all the questions, all the answers, with me helping you pick the correct answer and explaining why it's correct. We're also going to talk about some of the different question types and categories we see in the reading section of the T7. I'm Liz with smarteditionacademy.com. Before we get started, be sure to check out the links in the description below. We've actually got the opportunity for you to take a complete free practice exam, all the sections, not just the reading one that we're doing in this video. And you're going to get a score diagnostic report to help you figure out your strengths and weaknesses. And you're going to get some free study plans too to help you prepare for all sections of the exam. Remember, as you're studying for the T7, you don't have to study alone. Come to smarteditionacademy.com, check out the option to do our online T7 course. We have so many resources. We have 8 full-length practice tests, all the sections. We have a ton of content that's really helpful, and we have a mobile app so you can study on the go. You don't have to be lost and overwhelmed as you prepare for this test. We have so many resources to help you, and we know you can do it. We know you can get that great score. So let's head over and start our realistic reading practice test for the T7. So here we are about to start the reading practice test. This is a realistic reading practice test for the T7 exam. So we're actually going to have a timer going that will time 55 minutes to complete 45 questions. That's a timing for this section. If you want to work along with me in this video, we're not going to finish in that time because I'm going to take the time to explain the different question types and categories and give you some tips for studying along the way. However, if you prefer to try it on your own first and check out the realistic timing of the exam, you can always head over to the link in the description, that free practice test link, and you'll be able to take the exam in real exam style conditions with the timing. And kind of you can get an idea that way and see, oh, am I speeding? Am I rushing through the test? Or do I need to pick up my pace a little bit? But you can always start on this video with me and go through the test, take a little bit more time to understand the question types and know how to prepare for this part of the exam. So let's get started. Please read the text below and answer the following question. A global temperature change of a few degrees is more significant than it may seem at first glance. This is not merely a change in weather in any one location. Rather, it is an average change in temperatures around the entire surface of the planet. It takes a vast amount of heat energy to warm every part of our world, including oceans, air, and land, by even a tiny measurable amount. Moreover, relatively small changes in the Earth's surface temperatures have historically caused enormous changes in climate. In the last ice age 20,000 years ago, when much of the northern hemisphere was buried under huge sheets of ice, mean global temperatures were only about 5 degrees Celsius lower than they are now. Scientists predict a temperature rise of 2 to 6 degrees Celsius by 2100. What if this causes similarly drastic changes to the world we call home? Let's go to our question now. Which sentence is the topic sentence? So as we go question by question, I'll kind of tell you what kind of question, what subject we're looking at. And this is the part of the exam that tests what is a topic sentence, what is a main idea, what is a topic, what is a supporting detail. So if these terms are not familiar for you anymore, those might be some things to review. Right now, I can say that a topic sentence is a sentence from the text, is basically an umbrella idea that summarizes what the whole text is about. Everything that's addressed in the text should come back to this sentence, should have a connection to this sentence. Let's look at our options. What if this causes similarly drastic changes to the world we call home? So does that seem kind of like the umbrella? Is that the big topic that we're talking about all through here? Drastic changes? So in this, we're talking about kind of the future. What if this happens in the future? But the rest of the paragraph, we're talking about the past. We're talking about the effect of temperature all over the planet. So this question about what could possibly happen in the future doesn't seem to be the overall main kind of topic sentence that we want to have connecting everything in the paragraph. Next, a global temperature change of a few degrees is more significant than it may seem at first glance. So this one looks better to me because the author's really trying to explain that what seems like a small change actually has a big impact. So if we say like the average change in temperatures around the entire planet, it takes a vast amount of heat energy to warm up by a tiny measurable amount. So almost every sentence here is connecting back to this idea that small changes have big impact. If we look here and say, oh, in the last ice age, the temperatures was only about 5 degrees lower. So it was a small, but that's actually a big change. So this is a really good option. I like this one. Let's check out the others though. I think it's always really important to read all of the text carefully, read all of the question and answers. Make sure you're reading carefully, know what the question is asking, know everything about the answer. It's important to read carefully. And that's actually what we're testing on the reading section. I think a lot of people get nervous. They say, oh, I don't love to read. I didn't like literature class in school. This is really about paying attention and reading carefully. So you can definitely do that. Next, choice 3, it takes a vast amount of heat energy to warm every part of our world, including oceans, air, and land, by even a tiny measurable amount. So you might say, oh, but that's the same thing, talking about small changes, big impact. This one is more specific. So when we have something that's too specific, it's not really a topic sentence. That becomes more like a supporting detail, is something specific that supports. So number 3 is kind of a scientific fact that could support the topic sentence of number 2. So number 3, I would say, is too specific in this text to be a topic sentence. The degree of specificity, is it too specific or not, is relative based on the text, because if the topic sentence is really, really general, then the supporting details could be more general than a different text. But here we see that this is more specific compared to number 2. In the last ice age 20,000 years ago, when much of the northern hemisphere was buried under huge sheets of ice, mean global temperatures were only about 5 degrees Celsius lower than they are now. So this is also, I find, really specific. So this is even more specific because we have a lot of numbers and details and temperatures. And never say never, but I find that a lot of topic sentences won't have these specific dates. You know, topic sentence will be more like something, the Civil War changed America forever, something like that, possibly. And then we have statistics. Oh, in 1865, 20,000 soldiers were killed, something like that. Because it has these details, it's more of a supporting detail. So the one that we're going to use as the topic sentence is number 2. All right, so we're on the same text. I'm not going to read it again, but we will refer back to it. I really like going back to the text if it's possible as you're taking the test and looking at those small details again. That's important. If the mean global temperature during the last ice age was 10 degrees Celsius, which is a possible mean global temperature for 2100 based on the scientists' predictions? So this, for you people who don't love reading literature and you're really strong in math and logic, you can see that there's actually math and logic questions in the reading section. It's about reading carefully, finding details, extracting and analyzing information. So a lot of people who don't love reading can really have those strong skills and use them on this reading section. So let's see what it says about mean global temperature. Okay, so here we see in the last ice age 20,000 years ago, mean global temperatures were only about 5 degrees Celsius lower than they are now. So if, according to the question, that was 10 degrees, so that was 5 degrees Celsius lower than they are now. So if it was 10 then, which was 5 degrees lower, it's 15 now. But is that what they're asking us for? I see 15. Wait. Let's keep reading. Which is a possible mean global temperature for 2100. So we figured out the temperature for now, but the next step to get our answer is to go to 2100, to the future. Scientists predict a temperature rise of 2 to 6 degrees Celsius by 2100. So we said we're at supposedly 15 now. So 15 plus 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So let's look at our options. 5, no, that's not anything. So we see 5 degrees Celsius in there. So some people might just, if you skim a reading paragraph and you don't read the text or the question carefully, you might just say, oh, I see 5 degrees Celsius, 5 degrees Celsius. So reading carefully is really, really the key. It's not about being a great analyst of literature, a great lover of books, anything like that, reading carefully. So it's not 5. So that was the difference between the last ice age and now. 15 is what we said about it is now, according to this question. So that's not the question either. We need to go to the future. So the future is 15 plus 2 to 6. So 15 plus 2 would be 17. So we're going to be between 17 and, you can tell I'm not a math person, but between 17 and 21, I believe. All you great at math people can correct me. But yeah, so we're going to go 20 will be in that range. So we had last ice age was 10, current is 15, and then the future is 20. So as you can see, all about reading carefully and a bit of math as well. We're on our same passage here, so I won't reread that. Which sentence summarizes the main idea of the paragraph? Which sentence summarizes the main idea of the paragraph? So here we're asking about main idea. You might say, oh, but we just did that 2 questions ago. We did topic sentence. So topic sentence is an actual sentence that we lift from the text word for word. It's the same as in the text. Main idea is very connected to that, but it's almost like a restating or rephrasing. It's the author's argument, the point the author is trying to make in this paragraph. But the wording of the main idea is not the same as something in the paragraph. So it will be kind of restated. So the topic sentence is a sentence that expresses the main idea, but the main idea doesn't have word for word like the text. So let's read these and see. A small change in weather at any one location is a serious problem. Okay, so this sounds a lot like what our topic sentence was. And even as I was rereading this, and I've taken this test before, I said, oh, okay, yeah. Small changes, serious problem, yeah. But what's the problem here? Read carefully, because I didn't at first I didn't. Here they're saying a small change at any one location. And we see here the word any one location. But we're talking about this is not a change in weather in any one location. Rather, it is an average change in temperatures around the entire surface of the planet. That's an important difference, because we're not saying just, it got extra cold in Antarctica. We're saying temperature is changing all around the planet, and that's what's serious. So because of that, A does not work. It's not about one location. Next one, the author is manipulating facts to make global warming sound scary. We don't really see any evidence of manipulation here. We do see facts if we're going to accept this text and this source. We see facts with dates and temperatures and predictions from scientists. Also, when we say main idea, for the most part, it's not us criticizing the author of the text. The main idea is the point the author is making. We could take a different question and say, oh, what do you think about the text? Is the author right or wrong? Blah, blah, blah. But that's not really what main idea is. Next, people should be concerned by even minor global temperature changes. Okay, so that looks good, because that's very similar to what we saw in the topic sentence, this first sentence. A global temperature change is more significant than it may seem. And we also see everything matching back to that, a vast amount of heat energy. Relatively small changes have historically caused enormous changes in climate. And then we have a specific fact proving that. And then we say, what if this causes similarly drastic changes? So we see again, that idea of being concerned, that idea that the minor changes can have big effects. Next, it takes an enormous amount of energy to warm the earth even a little. So this is part of the text, but again, would be more a supporting detail, because the bigger the umbrella idea that's expressed word for word in the topic sentence and rephrased here in our main idea is that small changes have big impact. So we're going to go with number 3. So we're on the same text, so we don't have to reread, which is good because it's a bit long. So which of the following best describes the tone of the text? So when we talk about tone, we'll have some questions on the reading section, tone and mood. So tone really comes from the author. Tone is the author's word choice. We could also be asked sometimes, and be careful, about a character's or a speaker's tone, because maybe an author is a journalist writing an article about politics, and then they quote a politician who says, all the voters are stupid. Well, the politician's tone is very dismissive, but maybe the journalist criticizes the politician. So the tone can come from different people, but generally, if we're talking about the tone of the text, that's coming from the author. So the word choice that the author uses, are they being serious? Are they being funny? Do they really respect what they're talking about? Are they making fun of someone? Are they criticizing someone? So that's kind of the tone. And how we look for it, we look for kind of the adjectives they use, the verbs they use. This one will actually see an interesting thing too. So look at the end of this text. What if this causes similarly drastic changes to the world we call home? So one word I see is drastic. So drastic means very serious with big consequences. And that's kind of a strong adjective. So if I'm writing a funny piece and I want a funny tone, like a happy birthday card to my friend, I'm not going to see drastic. No, I would be like, oh, we had the best time. We had so much fun. I had a blast with you. Drastic would not be in there. So that adjective is one thing that makes me think it's pretty serious tone. And then the fact that they ended on a question. This is an interesting choice because when someone ends on a question, it's almost like they're letting you wonder, and they're saying that things are unsure and uncertain, and it kind of makes us nervous. So the tone is kind of questioning, unsure, stressed, kind of in that area. So let's look at the different options for tone. Concerned. Okay, yeah, that works because when we're talking about drastic, we see the word enormous changes. We're talking about significant. We're talking about, vast amount. Yeah, all these very serious types of words and descriptive language, plus the question at the end, makes us feel concerned, like what could possibly happen in the future. Next, critical. I don't see that much critical here. I could see a different paragraph on the same topic because they kept saying, more significant than it may seem at first glance. They're kind of giving the idea that some people don't take these climate changes seriously, but a different paragraph might say, those who dismiss these climate changes are ignorant. That would be a critical tone. That's an example of a critical tone. That's not really here. Next, celebratory. Well, that would be like a celebration. Celebratory tone would be like, we are thrilled that all the graduates of the class of 2024 are going on to bright futures. We don't see that here, unfortunately. And then ironic. Ironic is when something's the opposite of what you expect. So, for example, maybe you could say like a birthday card that's like, one of those joke ones that's like, oh, you're getting older and oh, it's another birthday and you're still alive. Something like that would be like, you're supposed to say something nice on someone's birthday. So if you say something not nice, that's ironic. It's unexpected. Probably don't buy a card like that for your parents or your teachers, but that would be ironic, the opposite of what you expect. That's not here. We're serious. We're worried. We see this language, enormous changes, drastic. We end with a question. So concerned. And just a little note that we have the tone that comes from the author's word choice. And then we have another concept called mood. The difference between tone and mood. Tone is coming from the author and the author's word choice. Mood is how it affects the reader. So something like, it was a dark and stormy night. We could talk about the tone, but we also talk about, ooh, that makes me feel scared as I'm reading it. So that's more, mood is about the reader. Tone is coming from the author's word choice. Let's continue. We're still on our global temperature change. So which sentence would best function as a supporting detail in this paragraph? So here, just like we talked about main idea, we talked about topic sentence, this is another concept that goes hand in hand with those. Supporting detail is different from main idea, different from topic sentence. It's something, remember I said some of them are too specific. Supporting detail is connected to those main ideas, but it's more specific. So we often see a historical date, a scientific fact. It could be an anecdote. It could be a topic about how children are stressed at school. And there's a little girl named Annabelle saying, I cry at school every day. It doesn't have to be like a fact or a scientific study, but it has to be specific and connected back to the main topic. So let's look at this. Electricity and heat production create 1/4 of all carbon emissions globally. So the problem here, I don't really see carbon emissions. I don't even see the word carbon. Hopefully I'm reading carefully as I told you to, but yeah, I don't see carbon. The problem is a lot of people have associations in their mind and they go outside the text. So a lot of people say, okay, I know climate change and carbon emissions and the planet and my carbon footprint, those are all linked. So let me choose that. But really stick to the text and what's in front of you. The world was only about 1 degree cooler during the Little Ice Age from 1700 to 1850. Okay, yeah, so we're talking about ice ages in here. When we say only 1 degree, that really connects back to that main idea we had about small changes, small temperature changes having a big impact. So that's really great. It's connected, but it's also specific. Look, we have the name of that time period, we have dates, we have an exact degree difference. It's specific but connected. Those are the 2 checkpoints for supporting detail. China has surpassed the United States as the single largest producer of carbon emissions. Again, carbon, no, I didn't see carbon. So even though it's a connected topic, it's not related to our text in front of us. And methane emissions are in some ways more concerning than carbon dioxide emissions. Methane emissions are in some ways more concerning than carbon dioxide emissions. Again, we're not on the carbon and the methane. We don't see those in the text. So we're going to go with number 2 here, a specific and connected supporting detail. All right, we're on to a new text here. Okay, read the passage below and answer the following question. Publishers typically pay male authors slightly higher advances than female authors. They also price men's books higher, which results in higher royalty payments for male creators. Male authors are more likely than female authors to win literary awards, receive speaking invitations, and gain attention from major reviewers, all of which drive sales. Which phrase best describes the topic of the group of sentences above? So topic, we already saw this, right? No, we actually didn't, but it's on the same kind of area of study. It's on our online TEAS 7 course. If you do sign up for that course, these are all kind of in the same page of content. They're in the same lesson for you to review. So we did topic sentence, but when we talk about just topic, that means the subject. So more generally, what are we talking about? Are we talking about history, fashion, food? It will be a bit more specific than that, but that's what we're talking about, the subject of this text. So an analysis of literary award winners. Well, we see the word literary awards, but we don't want to be those people who just see, oh, that same phrase. I see it's in the answer and it's in the text. So let's jump and choose that one. No, we don't want to be those people because those people lose points. So we won't do that. We don't have an analysis of literary award winners. We see male authors are more likely than female authors to win them, but that's just one part. I wouldn't say that's the whole topic of all of these sentences together. Gender differences in author income. Okay, so here, this is related to every sentence we see. Paid higher advances, so the payments they get before their books come out are higher. The price is higher. The royalty, the percentage they get for each book, that's higher. All of which drives sales. So we see the last part. They have a bunch of different ways that they're getting more money. And we see that topic is connected to every sentence there. So that's a subject we're talking about. So I do like that one. I'll choose it, but we'll keep looking at the others because always look at all the answers as long as you have time. But I do recommend looking at all the answers. A description of a book reviewer's day. No, we don't see, just because we see major reviewers, we don't see anything from their day or when they wake up or how many books they read a day. No. Resources for increasing author income. Well, the topic is connected to author income, but we don't see anything about how to make it higher or any resources, no associations or no businesses or consultants. No, nothing. So we're going to stick with gender differences in author income because that's the topic, the subject that's addressed in all of these sentences. Some texts, it might be addressed in, the majority of the sentences. All right, we're on the same passage about the publishers and the gender differences. The author's purpose in writing the text above was most likely which of the following? What does it mean when we talk about author's purpose? This is another concept that's tested on the reading part of the TEAS 7. So author's purpose is really, there's a few different ones that are the major ones. So to narrate or tell a story is one, which will often have characters. Oh, the girl and her mom set off into the forest and then they met a bear and then the bear turned out to be friendly. Twists, characters, storytelling, that's narration. Then we have the purpose being to persuade, to convince you. This will have a lot of descriptive language. Not only advertisements, but advertisements can have this, or an opinion article in the newspaper that says, oh, children should only go to school 2 hours a day because children's days are stressful and children need the liberation and the freedom of joyful play in the forest. Suddenly, they're using a lot of descriptive language and trying to play on your emotions to persuade you to come over to their side. Then we have inform. So inform is just to educate people, to give them information. There'll be a lot of facts. Sometimes it's scientific studies, historical facts, sociological studies, statistics to inform people. And then do we have anything else? Entertain is kind of connected to narrate. Entertaining is about storytelling. There might be humor, there might be suspense, there might be a twist. So those are some of the major authors' purposes, the reasons why authors write. Let's check out our options here. The author's purpose, was it to persuade publishers to create female-only literary awards? Okay. So do we see any persuasive, like descriptive language or any kind of call to action, as we say in marketing industry too, like, oh, publishers, you must create this now, or save female authors? They typically pay male authors higher. So that's more of a statistic based on averages of payment, not really, male authors undeservedly get ridiculously high payments. That would be more persuasive, descriptive type language. More likely to win awards. So again, those are actually more statistics. So I don't see that much description here. So persuasive would be something like women are unjustly, cast off of the bookshelves and pushed aside cruelly, something like that. But we don't really see that. To entertain fans of fiction, no, this is not entertaining. It might be interesting to you, but when we talk about entertaining as author's purpose, we're really talking about storytelling, humor, twists, suspense, different events, maybe an attachment we have to the characters. Not this. To inform readers about gender-based differences in publishing. Yeah, so when we say typically pay higher, we get the idea that someone's done research on the average numbers, more likely to win literary awards. So someone probably compared the statistics, the Nobel Prize in Literature was 60% men, whatever it is. So yeah, these are statistics, these are facts that are educating us, that are informing us. So that's a really great option. Next, to contradict claims that male authors sell more books. No, I mean, this is on the other side. They're saying, and especially in the last sentence, all these factors drive sales for male authors. So we're not contradicting. We're actually more on the side that male authors are selling more books. So we're going to go with number 3. Again, when you see statistics and facts and kind of more neutral language like this, typically pay, likely to win, these are kind of very calm, neutral language that we often see in an informative kind of educational text. Read the sentence below and answer the following question. Onto something new, a new text. Numerous robotic missions to Mars have revealed tantalizing evidence of a planet that may once have been capable of supporting life. Which statement is the most logical conclusion based on the text? This is another type of question that's actually quite a big concept that is tested on the reading part of the T7. Logical conclusion, drawing a conclusion. So not just searching directly in the text and taking out things word for word, but analyzing them. So this skill, it's not something you can really study, but I can say that you can improve this by reading the text carefully, reading the question carefully, reading the answers carefully, and kind of ruling things out by looking at those small details. So let's practice this skill together. Multiple astronauts have set foot on Mars. So can we draw that conclusion based on the text? Let's go to the text. Always go there and look at the details. So numerous robotic missions to Mars. Robotic missions. Did they say manned missions, or it should be a more gender neutral? I'm not sure there's a gender neutral. Astronauted missions or missions with astronauts have revealed tantalizing evidence of a planet that may once have been capable of supporting life. So we don't see anything about astronauts, people, or them walking on Mars. So no, we see robotic missions, but that's likely a robot, not a person. Next, Mars's environment is toxic to all life forms. So I have a little kind of ding, 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 a little alarm here. And I'm not going to promise you 100%, but I will say be careful when you see extreme words like always, never, all, none. Words like that, be careful. Be really sure if you choose an answer with a word like that. So Mars's environment is toxic to all life forms. But they say a planet may once have been capable of supporting life. So if there's a possibility that there was or is life on Mars, then it's not toxic to all life forms. No, no. Humans once lived on Mars. So do we see evidence here? So some people might say life. Okay, life equals humans. Let me jump to that conclusion. Remember, don't jump to a conclusion. Here we say capable of supporting life. But life doesn't mean humans. I mean, maybe depends what you believe about extraterrestrials or just, plants or tiny microorganisms. That could be life. So we don't have enough in the text to say humans. What about next? Researchers have more to learn about Mars. Do I have anything I can point to in this sentence and say that? I do. So what can you point to in this sentence to prove number 4? Take a second and take a look. What would you underline if someone say, why did you choose number 4? What would you underline? So to me, I would underline the word tantalizing, because tantalizing is something that makes you want to know more, or sometimes it can be makes you want to taste, the tantalizing food or something like that, but makes you want to know more. And then may once have been capable. So we see that word may means it's possible, but we're not sure. So when we hear tantalizing and may, those are possibilities. And that means we have to learn more. We have more to learn. There's things we don't know. We say, oh, maybe there was life there, but I'm not sure. So we need to learn more. So always look for what in the text supports your logical conclusion, because you can't just jump to a conclusion out of nowhere. You really need to focus on the text and then take it a step in your head further. All right, so our same sentence about Mars. Imagine this sentence is a supporting detail in a well-developed paragraph. Which of the following sentences would best function as a topic sentence? So honestly, for me, I find this question a little bit convoluted because you have to okay, so this is our supporting detail. Okay, I'm clarifying for myself because honestly, some questions can be difficult to read and understand. And then which one would be a topic sentence? So we're saying our robotic missions to Mars, possible life, the robots went to Mars, there were some clues about life. That's a supporting detail. So what do we remember about supporting detail? What did I say before? Supporting details are going to be specific. So now we're going to go up to our umbrella. This is our little raindrop. I guess the raindrops wouldn't be under the umbrella. This is the little specific facts under our umbrella. We're looking for which of the following sentences would best function as a topic sentence. We're looking for the umbrella. So we want something general, something more broad, more general compared to this mission on Mars finding evidence of life. Let's take a look. Venus is an intensely hot planet surrounded by clouds full of drops of sulfuric acid. I hope I pronounced that. Venus is an intensely hot planet surrounded by clouds full of drops of sulfuric acid. So this, I would say, is not broader, but there's a different problem. So if you remember, I had kind of 2 points. Supporting detail has to be more specific, but it also has to connect back to that topic sentence. And this one is not connecting to this Mars. We have 2 different planets we're talking about. And it's not even a connection like, oh, Venus may once also have had life because it has the same evidence. The connection is missing here. Of all the destinations within human reach, Mars is the planet most similar to Earth. Okay, so this is interesting. So we have Mars and a similarity to Earth. So what if this is our umbrella? Does that work? Mars is similar to Earth. Let's generalize like that. Mars is similar to Earth. Missions to Mars have shown that there may once have been life on Mars. Okay, yeah, so that's evidence that it's similar to Earth because they both had life on them, unlike some other planets where maybe there was no life possible. So this is interesting. Yeah, we have our general idea, Mars is similar to Earth, and then our more specific, there's evidence that there was life on Mars, just like there's life on Earth. That works, yeah. Next, liquid water, a necessary ingredient of life, may once have flowed on the planet's surface. Okay, so this one's a bit tricky because you might say this is connected. Yeah, this is connected because water is a necessary ingredient for life, capable of supporting life. It is connected. And you're right if you say it's connected, it's relevant. The problem here, this one is more specific. So this would be like if the mission to Mars has evidence of life is the umbrella, and then under the umbrella is water, is that evidence of life, getting more specific. But for this question, we're looking for an umbrella above the Mars life kind of thing. So this is like the opposite. This would be the supporting detail if this were the topic sentence. Very confusing because this question gets us a little bit turned around and hypothetical, imagine, blah, blah, blah. Number 3, let's just say it's too specific. Next, space research is a costly, frivolous exercise that brings no clear benefit to people on main Earth. Okay. So this one, I don't really see the connection. Maybe if there were more in the paragraph and they could say it's important to research Mars because the life might have a benefit in terms of medicine. But as we have these two sentences here, one's talking about the space program and the expense, and then one's talking about signs of life on Mars. There's not enough of a connection. But number 2, there's a connection, but it's also more general. It can be the umbrella above our sentence here. So that works. Read the sentence below and answer the following question. Numerous robotic missions to Mars have revealed, tantalizing evidence of a planet that may once have been capable of supporting life. So we're on the same text, but I decided to read it again because we've done a few and I want to refresh my memory, especially because we have another wordy question ahead of us. How could this sentence function as a supporting detail in a persuasive text arguing that space research is worth the expense and effort because it teaches us more about Earth and ourselves? Okay, so once again, just like the last one we saw, this was being a supporting detail. This time it's supporting detail in a text saying that space research basically is worth it. So how would that work? Why would that play that role? Let's take a look. By using statistics to back up an argument that needs support to be believed. So does this sentence use statistics? No, so let's cross out one. By showing how a space discovery could earn money for investors here on Earth. So does this text talk about money or any potential for making money? No, let's cross it out. By providing an example of a space discovery that enhances our understanding of life. Well, yeah, tantalizing evidence. They discovered it may once have been capable of supporting life. Yeah, so I like that one. I think that makes sense. Yeah. And then next, by developing the main idea that no space discovery can reveal information about Earth. So again, I hear that ding, ding, ding. So why did the ding, ding, ding go off in my head? No space discovery can reveal information about Earth. That kind of made me say, no, it's never possible, 100% never possible. I don't like these never possible. But also, this one we're talking about Mars, this one we're talking about Earth, so it's not really relevant to each other. And then, that would be, I guess you would kind of say, oh, they're spending money for Mars, but not for Earth. But it's such a stretch when we have this one that makes sense because understanding life, if we see a different planet where living things of some species or plant are existing, maybe we can learn about, medicine or life or the atmosphere or something like that. So that's number 3. Read the passage below and answer the following question. On to a new passage. Until about 1850, few people living in temperate climates had ever had the opportunity to taste a banana. Only after the invention of the steamship could importers and exporters reliably transport this fruit to North America and Europe. Railways and refrigeration were 2 other vital components in the development of the banana trade. Today, bananas are a major export in several Central and South American countries, as well as the Philippines. Around the world, people in climates that cannot support banana production now have access to plentiful, inexpensive bananas. Around the world, people in climates that cannot support banana production now have access to plentiful, inexpensive bananas. Which sentence provides an effective summary of the text above? So this is another concept that can be tested on the reading section of the TEAS. This is another concept, of course, if you sign up for our online course, if you hop on that mobile app and you get signed up, we have a lesson that addresses what is an effective summary. To summarize the idea of an effective summary for you, summary is not about adding new ideas, it's about restating the main ideas. So we don't want to add new things in the summary. Also, if you're summarizing a text, it's not your job to suddenly say, oh, this text about bananas is really boring. That's not what a summary is. Maybe you can say that to your friend who you're working with on this project, but that's not what a summary is about. It's about restating the main ideas, the big important ideas. So which sentence provides an effective summary of the text above? The author of this paragraph really likes bananas and researched them thoroughly. Well, as I just said, whether you think this author did a great job or, oh, bananas are boring, it's not about you judging the paragraph. That's not what a summary is. So let's cross that out. Shipping and refrigeration technology helped bananas become a major export crop. Yeah, so to me, that's the main idea. Yeah, exactly. We see, okay, railways and refrigeration. So those were vital components, and now people have access to bananas. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. This paragraph should include more details about the development of the banana trade. So again, we have like Judge Judy coming in here judging. I don't know if Judge Judy is still in the air, but some TV judge who's saying this paragraph is not good because it's too much about the bananas and there's not enough detail. Summarizing is not judging. Those are different. Before 1850, most Americans and Europeans had never had the opportunity to taste a banana. So this is, it's like almost the same as the first sentence. The problem here is this is a detail. Remember when we talked about details are being little and specific? Summarizing is not about picking one detail and saying, this is what it's about. Because if you talk about the whole paragraph, it's not about 1850 and who was or wasn't eating bananas. It's about the evolution of banana export. And that's why we're going to go with number 2. Number 4 is too specific and it's not a main idea. It's a small detail. So we have the same text here with our bananas. Read the following summary of the paragraph above. So we're still on the idea of summarizing. What is a good summary? Well, it should be objective. It should be focused on the main ideas. It should not be doing little details or judging, basically. According to John K. Miller, the invention of shipping and refrigeration technology helped bananas become a major export crop. The banana trade is an important source of income for many countries around the world, and consumers can buy bananas easily, even in places where bananas do not grow. What makes his summary effective? It makes a judgment on the original text without being unfair. Well, are we supposed to put on our Judge Judy robe when we summarize? No. Cross it out. It restates the ideas of the original text in completely new words. Yeah, so that's what we want to do in a summary. We're not copying word for word, but we're restating the ideas. It rearranges the ideas of the original text into a different sequence. So that's, that doesn't make an effective summary. The order of ideas is not really important in a summary. Potentially you could change the order, but it's really about choosing the main ideas. The order is not important. It highlights ideas from the original text that were not stated explicitly. So this one, I actually, for a while I gravitated towards this answer. We don't really want to take these implicit, which means these kind of under the surface, between the lines ideas. That's not what we want to use in the summary. So when they say not stated explicitly, well, we do want to use ideas that were stated explicitly, the ideas that were clear, that were the main ideas, the highlights of the text. But we're not going to highlight things that weren't exactly stated or the author only hinted at them. That's not what a summary is about. Summary should be focused on the main ideas of the original text, but in new words. So we're going to go with number 2. But I do see how number 4, depending on what your perception of explicit, implicit is, it could be difficult. But what they're testing here is that we really want to use the main ideas of the paragraph and not just the little implicit hints or mentions or things that we can read between the lines. That's not what a summary is about. Tricky. I think that one's a bit tricky though. Okay, so this question, we have a recipe. So the interesting thing about the reading section is actually you can be ready for any kind of text. And if you don't love, short stories or essays, you might have a different type of text, like the back of a medicine bottle, a label, something like that. So one way to prepare for the reading section is just to read things around you. If anyone's as old as me, they used to sit at the breakfast table and read the back of the cereal box because we didn't have cell phones. So reading things around you, learning to read carefully, kind of analyze what you read, ask yourself questions. If you read the back of the cereal box, say, oh, is this healthy? Is this not healthy? What's the serving size? All those kind of things. Those are questions that you might see that type on the reading part of the TEAS 7. So it's not just about essays, literature, short stories. It's about reading carefully, but reading anything carefully. So let's read this recipe carefully. So French style crepe recipe. Ingredients: 1 cup flour, 2 eggs, half cup whole milk, half cup water, pinch of salt, 1/4 cup melted butter. Directions: preheat a non-stick pan over medium heat. While pan is preheating, crack the eggs into a cup and beat with fork. Next, mix eggs and flour in a large bowl. Slowly pour water and milk into the bowl. Then mix in melted butter and salt and stir. When the pan is hot, pour 1/8 of the liquid mixture onto the hot surface, tilting the pan until it is covered. When the edges of the crepe are golden brown, lift the crepe with a rubber spatula and turn it over. Cook for 1 additional minute. Serve crepe warm. What does the fraction 1/8 represent in the recipe? So here we really have kind of a locate the information in the text kind of question, or an analysis of what it is. So let's find 1/8. So as I said, we don't always just say 1/8, 1/8. Okay, that must be this. We need to read the context and get the context. So here, when the pan is hot, pour 1/8 of the liquid mixture onto the surface, tilting the pan until it is covered. When the edges of the crepe are golden brown, lift the crepe with a rubber spatula and turn it over. So we see 1/8 of the mixture going into the pan, and then we see the word crepe in singular, crepe and crepe. So the 1/8 must be the amount to make a crepe. But let's read the options just in case. The amount of batter to make 1 crepe? Well, yes, because we see 1/8 of the mixture, and then suddenly we're talking about a crepe after it's poured around the pan. The amount of batter to make 8 crepes? Well, no, because we pour 1/8 on and we make 1 crepe at a time as it heats up in the pan. Twice the amount of melted butter needed. So let's take a look at that. What's our melted butter? So 1/4 cup. And then some people might be confused with the math. I know I haven't actually reviewed math in a long time, but 1/8 is actually less than 1/4. But some people might say, okay, 4 times 2, that's 8. So that's 1/8. But fractions are different than whole numbers. So we always have to remember that. 4 times the amount of milk needed. Well, let's see. So again, 1/2 is actually more than 1/8. But people who haven't reviewed their fractions versus their whole numbers might be confused there. But luckily we read carefully and we see it's the amount of batter to make 1 crepe. This is going to get us hungry, this text. So same text, same recipe. Let's go to the question. Of course, we'll refer back to the text as we go. Which of the following combinations of the ingredients needed for the recipe equals 1 3/4 cups? Select all that apply. So in addition to being ready for different types of texts on the TEAS 7 reading part, we might see different formats. So you kind of have to be ready for anything. There might be something where you have to write something in. There might be a check like this where there's multiple correct options and you really have to be careful that you're getting all the correct ones, none of the incorrect ones. So these can be challenging. So let's take a look. So we're trying to add up to get to 1 3/4. So let's look at the flour and the whole milk. So 1 cup flour and 1/2 cup whole milk. So that's 1 1/2 cup. So no, we're not going to check the first one. Next, the flour, the whole milk, and the water. Okay, so 1 cup flour, 1/2 cup whole milk, and 1/2 cup water. Well, 1/2 and 1/2 makes 1, and then we have another one, that's 2. The next option, number 3, the flour, the whole milk, and the melted butter. So 1 cup flour, 1/2 cup whole milk, and 1/4 cup melted butter. Okay. So let's add those fractions together. I'm definitely not the math expert, but I know we need a common denominator to add them up. So the 1/2 cup whole milk, let's turn it into 2/4 because that's the same as 1/2. And then we're going to add 2/4, 1/4, 3/4 plus 1 cup flour. Okay, 1 3/4. Yeah, so that's a correct answer. So do we stop there? No, because we read the question carefully. We know select all that apply. Of course, when you're in a rush on test day, this could be harder to remember. So read carefully, read the question, read all the answers. Please don't forget that. Next, the flour, the water, the melted butter. So 1 cup flour, 1/2 cup water, 1/4 cup melted butter. Actually, because this is the equivalent of the last one, we add 2/4 cup water, 1/4 cup melted butter, 3/4, and 1 cup flour. So 1 3/4, which is what we're looking for. So we have 2 options that are correct there. So really important in any question, but definitely in the select all that apply, read the question carefully, read all the answers. All right, so we're still on our recipe, still getting hungry over here to eat our crepes. According to the recipe, which step does not take place while the pan is preheating? So what type of question is this? So the reading section on the TEAS 7, one of the things they test is your ability to follow directions and the sequence of things. So if we have a first step, a second step, a third step, or if we have things taking place at the same time, as in this case. So those are important because it's important in life to be able to follow directions, to read carefully, to understand the sequence. So that's what they're testing with this question. So which step does not take place while the pan is preheating? So we might have to reread our directions. Preheat a nonstick pan over medium heat. While pan is preheating, crack the eggs into a cup and beat with fork. Next, mix eggs and flour in a large bowl. Slowly pour milk and water into the bowl. Then mix in melted butter and salt and stir when the pan is hot. So everything basically between here, this is happening while the pan is preheating, at the same time the pan is preheating. So we can eliminate those answers because we're looking for not. So basically everything happens from here to here. That's happening while the pan is preheating. And we can actually eliminate those steps because we read carefully. We know the question said which step does not take place in this sequence here. So combining eggs and flour. So we had eggs, mix eggs and flour. Okay, so not that. We're going to eliminate that. Incorporating melted butter. So that means like mixing it in, mixing it into the thing. So mix in melted butter. That's incorporating is a fancy way to say that. Warming the crepe. Do we see warming the crepe here? No. So I see serve crepe warm at the end, cook for 1 additional minute. I see that at the end. So that would be after. So that looks like a pretty good option, but let's double check our last answer. We always check all our answers. Adding the pinch of salt. Okay, then mix in melted butter and salt. That's mix in the salt, add the salt. So all those are ruled out. Warming the crepe comes later. And again, that's testing our ability to read, our ability to follow steps in an order, in a sequence. On to a new passage. Read the passage below and answer the following question. As a parent, I find television and movie rating systems unhelpful. Rating systems are not human. Their scores are based on numbers. How many bad words, how many gory scenes. To me, that makes no sense. Nobody else knows my kids like I do, so nobody else can say what's okay for them to watch. In my experience, the content a government organization rates as PG or PG-13 may or may not be appropriate for my 9, 14, and 16-year-olds. My youngest is quite mature for his age, and I'm fine with him hearing a bad word or two as part of a meaningful story. Violence concerns me more. I won't let even my 16-year-old watch frivolous violence or horror, but I don't shelter him from realistic violence. My little guy still has to stay out of the room for the bloody stuff, but eventually kids need to know what's out there. The primary purpose of this passage is to... Okay. So let's take a look. Again, we have this author's purpose kind of question. So are we narrating? Are we entertaining? Are we storytelling? Are we persuading? Are we using a lot of descriptive language to get people to one side or the other? Are we informing? Do we have a lot of facts and statistics? Let's take a look. So the first one is decide. So are we making a decision? So in general, when the author's purpose is to decide, we'll have kind of like compare and contrast, or we'll have two different options or multiple options to make a decision. Here we don't really have that. We're saying the rating system doesn't really work. So that's what the person is really saying. So decision between, it's not really a decision between two rating systems or a numerical versus, a 5-star rating system. So I wouldn't say decide. Next is inform. Okay. So what's a tone here? So it's a little more personal. Before we had a passage that was about informing, and it had a lot of statistics. It said, statistically male authors sell more than female, or have, a higher advance or average, something like that. So this one is using more descriptive language and also personal language. As a parent, I find they're unhelpful. Rating systems are not human. That makes no sense. So is that a fact when this person is writing? That makes no sense. Well, no, it's not a fact. No, it's not a fact. It's an opinion. Someone, for me, maybe it makes sense, but for them, they're saying it doesn't make sense. So this is where we have to decide between fact and opinion, which also plays into inform or persuade. So violence concerns me more. I don't shelter him from realistic violence. So it's very personal. There's also some descriptive language like gory scenes or realistic violence versus frivolous violence. It's really this person's opinion. But when we see descriptive language like this or personal language like this, we know that's often to persuade. And here I would say the goal is really to persuade that, I find these rating systems unhelpful. So it's not a decision between two rating systems, but to persuade people reading that it's more about personal and about your own children compared to just following the government system without thinking about it. Next option, to entertain. So this is not entertaining because we don't have, story. We don't have a beginning, middle, end. We don't have characters that we're attached to or a twist or humor. So this is not entertaining. There's nothing making us laugh or making us gasp or something. And again, we'd probably be down to inform and persuade if you're down to 2. If you get down to 50-50, that's great. Inform, I would want to see some more statistics or some more information. 55% of children report this, or, studies have proven this. And I don't see that here, so I'm going to go with persuade. So on the same passage about movie ratings, the author of this passage would be most likely to agree that. So this, again, just like we saw questions about drawing a logical conclusion, this is kind of similar, where we do have to take a little bit step further and analyze what we read, but we also want to look for some clues in the text that support our decision. If you remember before, I think it was the Mars question, we said, the conclusion is that we need more information about Mars. So we underlined, tantalizing, there may have been life. So those words, could justify our decision, our analysis. It's kind of the same when we say, what would this author think about this? So first option, kids should not watch television or movies at all until they are in their teens. So do we have evidence to support that this author feels that way? No. So they're saying my youngest is quite mature. I'm fine with him hearing a bad word or two as part of a meaningful story. So they're allowing even their youngest child to watch movies and TV shows. And then the 16-year-old can't watch frivolous violence or horror, but isn't sheltered from realistic violence. So the 16-year-old is watching TV and movies. The youngest is. So no, let's cross out number 1. Government rating systems should have more levels to make them more useful. So is this person looking for more levels? Well, they say rating systems are not human. Their scores are based on numbers. To me, that makes no sense. So adding more numbers or more levels would probably be even worse for this person, but definitely not helpful. They're saying they don't like the system of ratings. It doesn't matter how many levels it has. So let's cross out number 2. It is never appropriate to prevent any human being from watching any show or movie. Let's see if there's any evidence for or against this that we can point to and say the author feels this way. Let's see. Well, they're saying I won't let my 16-year-old watch frivolous violence or horror. So I would cross out this one. It's never appropriate. Again, I hear a little ding, 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 never. We have to be really careful, but we're not going to choose that one because this parent does prevent their kids from watching certain things. So to say it's never appropriate, no, they're saying it's appropriate in certain cases. Next, another parent should have the right to let her own kids watch extremely violent movies. Interesting. So if I just read this and I didn't go to the text, I would say, "Ooh, okay, extremely violent movies. That's a bit strange." But we've crossed out everything else, and let's look for some evidence. Okay. I don't shelter my 16-year-old from realistic violence. Interesting. Okay. Eventually, kids need to know what's out there. So saying, their younger child even eventually will be seeing these movies. Yeah. Their scores are based on how many bad words, how many gory scenes. To me, that makes no sense. Yeah. May or may not be appropriate. So, especially here, I would say, I don't shelter my 16-year-old from realistic violence. So, and really the whole idea of this as well, this is important too. We could point to this also as evidence. Nobody else knows my kids like I do, so nobody else can say what's okay for them to watch. So I think that's another important thing because that shows this parent's values are really based on individuality and knowing your own kids. So we can point to that line and say they would support another parent's right to choose what their kids watch. So all those clues together we can point to and justify number 4. All right, on the same passage about movie ratings. Which of the following words would best replace frivolous in the last paragraph? Here we have a vocabulary question. Both the ELU or the reading sections on the T7 could have vocabulary. It's often in context, so we do have some context about it. So let's take a look at the context. Violence concerns me war. I won't let even my 16-year-old watch frivolous violence or horror, but I don't shelter him from realistic violence. Okay. So one test-taking technique that I used to teach, which could be helpful for you, is not looking at the answers. So cover up. Well, you can't see me covering up, but cover up the answers. And before you look at the answers, try to choose your own definition based on the context. So I won't let him watch frivolous violence, but I don't shelter him from realistic. So maybe if I don't know the word frivolous, I'm saying, unrealistic or extreme or ridiculous or something that's the opposite kind of realistic. Because we have the word but that's contrasting the frivolous violence or realistic. So maybe a word like that. But we also have to take a look at the options because a word we guess might not be exactly the same. So minimal. I won't let even my 16-year-old watch minimal violence or horror, but I don't shelter him from realistic. Those don't seem like too, yeah, I don't think so. That doesn't really fit there. The word but doesn't work because minimal versus realistic, no. I won't let even my 16-year-old watch limited violence or horror, but I don't shelter him from realistic. Again, these two don't really make sense because if you're saying, I don't let him watch any kind of horror, minimal, the minimum of horror, or limited horror even, but then to say that he's allowed to watch realistic, it doesn't make sense. It's not consistent. If we go to senseless, okay, I won't even let my 16-year-old watch frivolous violence or horror, but I don't shelter him from realistic. Now we have senseless to replace frivolous. Does this work? So senseless violence versus realistic. So I think this can work because we're saying senseless means it has no point. It's silly or it's exaggerated or it's too much or it's not part of the story. But then if we go to realistic, that is part of the story. So maybe the violence shows, how a character develops, or it's realistic because it's a movie about the Civil War and there was a lot of violence on the battlefield. But frivolous or senseless violence would be a movie that just has people stabbing each other for no reason. That's kind of pointless, senseless, frivolous. What about, I won't even let my 16-year-old watch fictional violence or horror, but I don't shelter him from realistic. I think this could be tricky for some people because they might think, but so then fictional and realistic are very different, but they don't say real violence and there's a difference. So realistic violence could, it's still fictional, I hope, because if we're watching real violence, that's very bad. In a documentary, that would be very hard to watch. Both of these are probably fictional. If we have a movie about the Civil War with soldiers, that's still fictional. It's fiction because we didn't have video cameras during the Civil War. but it's also realistic in the sense that it could have really happened. It's part of history. It's part of the story. So let's go with senseless. Senseless. So senseless, frivolous, what it really means is like extra, unnecessary. And then senseless, it means kind of like pointless. So they're not exactly the same word, but it could fit in the same context. On our passage about movies, what is the most likely reason for the author's decision to include the phrase as a parent at the beginning? So, here again, we're kind of drawing a conclusion, or we're putting ourselves in the author's mind and trying to see where they're coming from. So, these questions are hard to study for. Again, what we can do is read carefully, look for clues in the text. This phrase provides a reason to support her opinion. She is implying that non-parents cannot know what kids need. This phrase provides a transition from the point she made earlier. She is establishing herself as a knowledgeable source on this topic. Okay, so I'm going to look at number 3 first because I think we can rule it out. This phrase provides a transition from the points she made earlier. Well, all we have is this text, and the first thing she says is as a parent, so it's not a transition because we have nothing before it. So easily we can cross that out. Let's see. What about number 2? She is implying that non-parents cannot know what kids need. So she doesn't say that here, and I think it's quite a jump to say that. They say rating systems are not human, movie ratings are unhelpful, a government organization rates, but she doesn't really address non-parents. She's more saying that the system isn't appropriate because it's just based on numbers. She doesn't say anything like the government doesn't have children or these government officials don't know what it's like to have kids. If she said that, we would have some justification, but we don't see anything there. So let's go to number 1. This phrase provides a reason to support her opinion. Okay, so I think this is not a bad answer. As a parent, I find television and movie rating systems unhelpful. Rating systems are not human. Okay, nobody else knows my kids like they do. And let's go to the last one. She is establishing herself as a knowledgeable source on this topic. To be honest, if I were taking this test, I would have trouble. I would get down to these two. I would be 50-50, and it would be a bit difficult for me to decide. I think because she starts with as a parent, establishing herself kind of works with the fact that it's the opening phrase of the text. And I guess, the first one, a reason to support her opinion, is not quite enough reason to support her opinion because a parent, parents are not perfect. If a parent writes a paragraph that has no supporting details, no evidence from their own kids, here this person gives examples. My youngest is mature for his age, so he can watch these things. My oldest, I choose more carefully, whatever it is. So they're giving specific examples that support their opinion. It's not just, I'm a parent, so anything I say about this topic must be right. And that's kind of what they're saying here. The reasons to support her opinion or not, she's a parent, okay, automatically we support. Instead, she gives these supporting details about her different kids and their different maturity levels. And those are the reasons we support her opinion, not just following everything she says because she's a parent. So that's why I would rule out the first one. And then also the fact that she starts with as a parent kind of gives her a knowledgeable source, but it's not enough to support her opinion. She does have something to say. So we say, oh, she's a knowledgeable source. Let's listen to what she has to say. But we also need to support her opinion with some of these details and examples about her kids and her experience. So that's the difference. But if you got down to those two and you're 50-50, I'm there with you. I totally understand. And if you can eliminate 2 and do a 50-50, like on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, go for it. Once you get down to guessing between 2, that's better than guessing between 4. So, all right. So we'll do knowledgeable source. But that was a tough one. That was a really tough one, I think. When the author says rating systems are based on numbers, she is developing the point that logic and reasoning have no place in parenting. Ooh, for me, that's ding, 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 ding. That's a very extreme answer to say there's no logic in parenting. The word no is very extreme. I don't like that answer. It's very extreme. and it doesn't match with what she's saying because she's using logic and reasoning. Here she's saying my youngest is mature for his age and I'm fine with him hearing a bad word. So she's using the reasoning that my kids' maturity levels are different. What they watch is going to be different. Let's get rid of answer number 1 now. The only numbers that matter are her children's ages. Actually, no, because what I just said, my youngest is quite mature for his age. So his age, I guess he's 9, doesn't matter as much as his maturity level and his individual personality and how he reacts to violence. So this we're going to cross out too. Some decisions should be made on a case-by-case basis. So yeah, this is more what she's saying here. My youngest, this could work for him. The 16-year-old, some violence is okay, some violence is not okay. That's case by case. And then she's not good enough at math to rely on rating systems. No, we have no evidence she's not good at math. No, that's not mentioned at all or even hinted. No. So case by case basis. Study the label below and answer the following question. Okay, as I said, we have to be ready for anything on the reading section. So if you're more into nutrition than literature, then this is great for you. I don't think I'll read the whole thing. You should read it carefully, but I don't think I'll read the whole thing out loud. Let's go to the question and then go back up and look for the information. So how many calories are in one serving of this product? So I would recommend for these to go back to the text or the image first before looking at the answers, if that's possible for you while taking the test. Because sometimes when you look at the answers, you can kind of peek and get, oh, okay, it must be that, or it can lead you into a different direction. It's best to kind of figure out your answer and then compare to the answers. So we're looking for calories in one serving. Okay. So amount per serving here. Calories 150. So calories per serving must be 150, right? If it's not in our answers, then we've done something wrong. We haven't read carefully, but let's see. Okay, it's there. So yeah, what is the TEAS 7 testing here? Really just your ability to read carefully. So you will see some questions like this. Sometimes people say, oh, but it's too easy. It's a trick. There are questions where you just have to locate information by reading carefully. And of course, reading the question carefully too. So we're on our nutrition label again. Jermaine ate 60 crackers out of this box, so I'm not going to scroll to the answers yet. Let's not peek at the answers yet. How many servings did he consume? Okay, 60 crackers. How many servings? Let's go up. So serving size, 20 crackers. Okay, and then he ate 60. So how many times does 20 go into 60? 3. So let's hope 3 is an answer. It's always kind of better if you can calculate yourself and then go and check if your answer is one of the answers available. So 3 servings of 20 crackers make 60 crackers. All right, so we're still on our nutrition label here. Fatima is attempting to confine her diet to products low in sodium. How much of this product should she eat? So I think this one, we're not looking for a specific number, but no, I guess we'll look at the label first. So let's see how much sodium. So sodium here, 160 milligrams, 7%. So 7% of daily value. So let's take a look at the options. None, the product is not low in sodium. 1 serving, the amount of sodium is reasonable. The whole package, the contents are appropriate for a low sodium diet. Less than 3 servings, she needs to keep her sodium intake below 20%. So this one, from what I understand from doing some of these questions, and you'll all be more expert than me, is that a low amount would be less than 5%. So here we have 7%. We're over. So we're not at a low amount. So she's looking for products low in sodium. If this has 7% of her daily sodium, it's not a product low in sodium as given that 5% limit. So we're going to go with number 1. So again, this is what I've taken from some different materials that I've been looking at, that 5% would be low, but you can definitely go ahead and check on that one and make sure the levels are appropriate. But yeah, if we see 7%, it's definitely not 0%. So maybe this is not the best snack for her. All right, so we're on to our next text. This is actually a timeline. So a potential text, you have to be ready for any kind of text. So this one involves some dates. Timeline of author Zora Neale Hurston's early life. January 1891, Zora Neale Hurston is born in Alabama. June 1918, Hurston graduates from high school. 1920, Hurston graduates from Howard University. 1921, Hurston publishes her first short story. 1926, Hurston meets Langston Hughes in Harlem. January 1932, Hurston's musical The Great Day opens on Broadway. May 1934, Hurston publishes her first novel, Jonah's Gourdvine. 1939, Hurston joins the Federal Writers Project. So I did just read this timeline, kind of more to give you an idea of what you might see as one of the materials potentially on the test. But I think some of these, like the nutrition label and this one, it might be more valuable for you to just skip ahead to the question and then go back and locate the information. There's kind of two ways of approaching the test. One is reading the passages first. The problem if you read the passage, for example, I was just reading that and it was interesting, but I didn't really register the information because I don't know what I'm looking for yet. So if you're someone like me who maybe the information kind of goes in one ear out the other when you don't know what you're specifically looking for those type of people, I would suggest read the question first. Okay, so which correctly identifies the time span between Hurston's graduation from college and the publication of her first novel? Let's try this one without looking at our options. So the time span, the period of time between her college graduation and publishing her first novel. So where's her college graduation? I see two graduates, but this one's high school. The college one is Howard University, so 1920. And then the publication of her first novel. I see the word published, but that's a short story. So we always read carefully. That's not a novel. Publishes her first novel. So we have 1920 to May 1934. So we don't have months. That's okay. We see 1920 to 1934. So it's a big relief when you go and find the answer and then you see that it is one of the answers. If you find an answer and then it's not one of the options, that's not good. But it's sometimes better because you don't get tricked. Like maybe I just see, okay, 1918, that's enough. 1918 graduates. And I'm just reading quickly as I take the test. And I don't notice that it's graduates from high school. So the answers are sometimes written to trick you. So if you can kind of, look for the information, then do the answers. But sometimes on test day, you just have to go in order, reading the passage, reading the question, reading the answers, choosing one. It really depends how you're taking the test and kind of how you think. All right, next question. How old was Zora Neale Hurston when she graduated from high school? So I won't look at the answers yet. I want to find my own answer first and then see if that answer exists as an option. So let's see. She graduated from high school in June 1918. Then we have to subtract the year she was born to find her age. So she was born 1891. So we have 1918 minus 1891. I'm definitely not the math expert at Smart Edition Academy, but if you do want math experts, you can definitely take our online course and then you'll get all the sections and you'll get to, have our different experts on different sections. Here, I'm going to do my best and say, okay, 27, right? So 18 plus 9. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So we have 9 years to get to 1900 and then 18 years. Yes. One other thing we have to check because we do have the 2 months, but it works out because she turned 27 in January 1918 and then she graduated in June. So her birthday was already passed. So it is indeed, she is 27. It's not just the 27th year of her life. So 27, yeah. And this one's a really good example of why we can find our answer before looking at their answers because they want to trick us. If we don't read carefully, find our answer first, 17, 18, yeah, those are the ages you graduate from high school. But if we found our answer first by going to the facts, by checking the timeline, we know she was actually 27. People graduate from different schools at different ages. I think I just saw someone got their master's at like 90 years old or something. So they're trying to trick us to pick a common age to graduate from high school. We need to go to the text and locate the information ourselves. That's our lesson here. Which statement, if true, is a fact? Okay, so we're on to something different. We don't have a passage. We have some different sentences as our choices. What is the reading section testing here? They're testing fact versus opinion. This is one of the lessons if you do choose to take our online TEAS 7 course, which also has the website and the mobile app. We do have a lesson on what is a fact, what is an opinion. Here we see a fact is going to be something we can prove and we can check. So even if someone says, oh, the study showed that blah, blah, blah. Okay, we can go back and check in the library online, of course, now the study and say, oh, yes, that is what the study showed. But if I say peanut butter cookies are the most delicious cookies, that's my opinion, because my best friend might say, no, chocolate chip are the most delicious. Peanut butter is disgusting and I'm allergic, so I can't even eat it anyway. So we have different experiences. Those are our opinions. And we're often used descriptive language and opinion. So let's keep an eye out for that. Number 1, the 1918 flu pandemic killed more people than World War I. So could we go back and check this and see, oh yeah, check, that's true. We can, because killed more people is the higher number. We're comparing two numbers. So if we go back, I don't know the numbers, but if we go back and say the flu pandemic killed 2 million, the war killed 1 million, I think it was much, much more than that. But anyway, we can compare and say 2 is more than 1. That's a fact. Check. So good option. What about number 2? The 1918 flu pandemic was more devastating than World War I. I hear some descriptive language, devastating, like when I say, oh, peanut butter cookies are the best, the most delicious. That's my opinion. Saying it's more devastating than World War I, that's your opinion. Devastating is different for different people. Sometimes a band breaks up and that's devastating for someone, but something else is more devastating. Devastating is relative. Even if you can say, oh, wars are more devastating than, having a hangnail. I think most people would agree, but it's also your opinion. So the idea of devastating as this adjective, as this descriptive word, gives us an indication it's an opinion. The 1918 flu pandemic was a terrifying display of nature's power. Again, I think majority of people would probably agree, the pandemic is terrifying. But when we hear that descriptive language, we can't go back to a sociological study and say, oh, was it terrifying or was it not? Oh, that study from 1990 proved that it was terrifying. No, it's not a check yes or no. It's a relative thing. The descriptive term terrifying gives us a clue about that. The 1918 flu pandemic caused greater social instability than the plague. So interesting, because we had the word more in the first one. I said that's a fact. So we'll even click it. It's a fact. But here we have greater. In some cases, greater could indicate a fact. You have to be careful with greater, because if we say a greater number of soldiers died in the Civil War than the War of 1812, okay, that's a statistic that we can measure and compare, like this one. But if we say greater social instability, saying there was like more problems in society, or society was more messed up, I guess we could say, that's descriptive language. And that's something that's relative. Social instability. If I say, oh, this society is really, it's really chaotic, that's my opinion. Or if I say this time period was more chaotic and not as stable as this one, that's really my opinion, because we can't go back and check and say yes or no. So even though the word greater could be used in a fact with numbers or in an opinion, in this case, it's an opinion because we can't determine which society or which period is stable or unstable. So let's go with number 1. We can check the numbers, 2 million, 1 million, check. All right, so we're also on to another fact versus an opinion. Which statement is an opinion? Freshman Anita Jones states that excessive homework requirements cause her undue stress. Okay, so interesting. You might be saying, okay, I heard your lesson. Descriptive language, excessive homework, that's her opinion. I don't think it's excessive. I can do all my homework in 5 minutes. Excessive, undue stress? No, it's a normal amount of stress. Different. Okay, this is descriptive language. So this is an opinion, right? Right? But what are we going to check in that book or in that study? All we need to check is, did freshman Anita Jones state this or not? And we can check that. If we go to the researchers or the journalist or the principal of the school who took down her report or her comments, we can check that she stated it. So it doesn't matter whether the homework was excessive or not. What we're checking here is, did Anita Jones state this or not? And we can check that. So that's actually a fact. Those ones are tricky, so keep an eye out for those. Students reported symptoms such as headaches, anxiety attacks, and difficulty sleeping. A little more straightforward, but again, we have to be clear. Did students report this? Well, we can go to, the school nurse and say, oh, were there reports of this? Yes or no? She shows us the report. Yes. Okay. Next, excessive homework requirements cause students undue stress and harm their quality of life. Okay. So the homework is excessive. It causes undue stress. So is it someone stating this, or is it students reporting this? No, this is a statement that the excessive homework has this undue stress and harms the quality of life. Well, who's to say if your quality of life is better or worse? That's an opinion. This is an opinion. Next, students who do homework more than 3 hours per day show elevated cortisol levels compared to students who do no homework. So this one is pretty scientific, and we could go and confirm. So of course we would need a citation. I'm not saying we immediately know how to confirm it, but it's possible to confirm something. Anita Jones states, or some students reported, maybe we can't find the records, or maybe the principal says, oh, she didn't report that to me. We're really talking about, is it something that can be verified, that can be checked? And in this case, we go to the study, wherever the study is. Did we compare the cortisol levels? Yes. So the only one here, excessive and undue stress, are used as descriptors in the statement. It's not just someone stated that it was excessive, but the statement itself that we're looking at has these descriptive words in it: excessive, undue, harm the quality of life. So that's how we know it's an opinion. We got a long passage. I have to read it. You have to listen to it. Let's go. I hope I just have to read it once. Read the passage below and answer the following question. A growing focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, has brought funding and excitement for these subjects into schools. Meanwhile, the push for standardized testing is requiring teachers to devote a large proportion of class time to reading and math test preparation. One consequence of these dual trends is that students are skimping on social studies instruction. Mindful world citizens need, at a minimum, a general awareness of foreign cultures, a passing familiarity with geography, and a basic understanding of history. If you're not sure your child's school is instilling these basic foundations of knowledge, you need to support your kids' learning yourself. Daunting as this may sound, it doesn't need to take an inordinate amount of time and effort. A good first step is to keep a globe or world map in a prominent location in your home. Whenever possible, refer to this resource in conversation. For instance, if your child is interested in a particular animal, point out where in the world it lives. If older children ask questions about the news, show them where current events are happening. If your budget allows it, keep a good children's atlas handy too. This will allow your conversations to go into greater depth if your children show interest. This article is written for. So one of these, you have to look at the answers. I mean, potentially you could go through the article and say, who do I think this is written for? And then look at the answers. But it's a bit different than those questions where we had, what is the serving size? I'd rather, on the specific type of locating the information, I'd rather check the chart myself and then come back and see if my answer is there. That's a bit more on kind of like math style questions, I guess I would say, or locating information questions. This one, I'm going to read the answers. This article is written for parents, children, teachers, or policymakers. Let's take a look. We do mention teachers, but does that mean the article's for teachers? Okay, I see a clue here. So if you're not sure your child's school, you need to support your kids learning yourself. So they're saying your child, your kids learning at home, if your child, so it's for parents. Talking about your child, it's for parents. The author of this article assumes that So one of the concepts, the reading part of the TEAS test, is an assumption. So that's something that the author doesn't explicitly say in a text, but from the things that we say, we can understand that they have this belief, or they have this value, or they have this motivation in mind. It's a little bit different than, it's not the purpose, it's not the reason they're writing, but it's something they believe, or something that was established in their mind before they started writing. And we can see the evidence of that in the writing, even though they don't state it. So the author of this article assumes that parents are eager to support their children's education. So do we have any evidence about that? Okay. Well, I would say yes. So if you're not sure your child's school is instilling these basic foundations of knowledge, you need to support your kids' learning yourself. So they're giving advice. Also, this line I would definitely point to, but also all the advice in here. The author believes, kind of has a foundational belief, like comes from the belief that the parents want to help their children learn. Otherwise, they wouldn't write a whole article about how to help them learn. No, they just say, just send your child to school, and if they don't learn everything, But because they're giving all this advice, and because they say this, you need to support your kids' learning, then they assume that parents are eager to support their children's education. And the assumption, we're not going to see an exact line that says, you are a parent, so you are eager to support your children's education. It's more like we see the result of this belief. That's what the assumption means. So that's a good option to start. Parents have unlimited time to support their kids' education. Do they say this? No, actually, kind of the opposite. They're saying it doesn't need to take an inordinate amount of time and effort. So they're kind of reassuring them. You don't need a lot of time to teach them things. It's okay. Next, teachers do not like helping children learn about social studies. Do we see any evidence of this? So STEM has brought funding and excitement for those subjects. Science, tech, push for standardized testing is requiring teachers to devote time to reading and math. And the consequence is that their schools are skimping. But they say requiring teachers. So it's not the teachers choosing, I like reading and math, I don't like social studies. That's not what's happening. So we don't see evidence of that. And teachers all prefer STEM subjects and reading over social studies. So quite similar here. I mean, they're saying the STEM focus has brought funding and excitement for these subjects, but we don't see the teachers prefer it. And here we see requiring teachers to devote their time to reading and math, not the teachers choosing that over social studies. It's just a result, it's kind of unintended consequence. So we're going to go with the first one. We see so much indication in here that we see suggestions how to help the kids learn. We have the line about helping kids learn. So the author must come from this belief that parents want to help their kids learn. A careful reader of this article can infer that the author wants children to grow up to become. So what does it mean, infer? Infer is like kind of read between the lines, get the hint. Again, this is the reading test. Again, a big topic is kind of you read the text and then you extract this information, or you analyze this information. Even in some cases we've seen it's written out clearly. Just locate the information. What is the serving size? Serving size 20, whatever it was. This is a different kind of question where maybe the information isn't written exactly, but you have to read and analyze to determine the information. So those are two kind of different types of questions we see in reading. Well, you will probably see both of them. So does the author want children to grow up to become STEM employees, successful teachers, prominent news anchors, mindful world citizens? So we mentioned teachers, what they're required to do. But we don't see them talking about children becoming teachers. Children are interested in animals. Children are interested in the news. No, I don't see teachers. What about STEM employees? No, growing focus on STEM. We don't see children becoming STEM employees. I mean, we mentioned STEM here just to say how it affects social studies, and the rest of the text is about social studies. So the author is not about STEM really. Prominent news anchors. Well, we do see the word news, ask questions about the news. We see the map in a prominent location. So some people will just skim. That's a problem if you skim and you read quickly and you just see prominent news. Okay, prominent news anchors. But prominent location means like a central location in your home that everyone can see. And children are just interested in the news. It doesn't mean they're going to grow up and say, this is the 6 o'clock news. So we're going to go with mindful world citizens because we see that here. Mindful world citizens need a general awareness of foreign cultures, geography, understanding. If you don't think the school is doing it, you need to do it yourself. So the author is saying mindful world citizens need all this knowledge. Here's how you can give it to your kids because your kids should grow up to be mindful world citizens. So that one works. Which conclusion is not supported by the article? So again, testing our skill to draw a conclusion out of something that will not be explicitly, directly, clearly written in there, but we have to get the clues of it and we have to point to our evidence that supports our conclusion that we choose. So the author thinks teachers have limited time and energy. Okay. Also, this is an interesting question because they're saying which conclusion is not supported. So we should actually be able to find evidence for 3 of them out of the 4. So let's look for evidence. The author thinks teachers have limited time and energy. Well, the push for standardized testing requiring teachers to devote a large proportion of class time to this. Consequence is that they're skimping on other teaching. So because they have to do reading and math, they don't have as much time for social studies because their time is not unlimited. Their time is limited. Okay. So number 1 is supported. So it's not supported. So we cross it out. These questions with not can be tricky. The author thinks people benefit from understanding history. So let's see. Mindful world citizens need at minimum a passing familiar and a basic understanding of history. Okay. So yeah. So mindful world citizens need to understand history. So people benefit from understanding history. The author thinks children are naturally curious. Do we have any support for that? Well, they mention if your child is interested in a particular animal, if older children ask questions about the news. So we could point to those and say the author thinks children are curious. They expect the children to be asking these questions. The author thinks schools need more standardized tests. Do we have any? So the push for standardized testing has required teachers to devote proportional class time to reading and math. They're skimping on other instruction because they're required to teach to these tests. So that's not really supporting there. And then the rest of the text, we don't see the author saying, oh, we need more standardized tests. The author is advocating for a more natural way of learning, like using a globe at home, talking about animals, watching the news, having conversations with the parents. This is kind of the opposite of standardized testing. It's a really natural way to learn. So I would say that one is not supported. Which word below would best replace inordinate in the second paragraph? So here we have a vocabulary and context question. As I mentioned, vocabulary can come up on 2 of the sections. At least, English style vocabulary can come up on 2 of the sections, the ELU or the reading. We often see it in context. So let's go back and read the context for this. If you're not sure your child's school is instilling these basic foundations of knowledge, you need to support your kids learning yourself. Daunting as this may sound, it doesn't need to take an inordinate amount of time and effort. Okay. So we did let's try to come up with our own definition first. We peeked at the answers, but that's okay. So it doesn't need to take an inordinate amount of time and effort. So you can keep the globe out, you can talk with the children. So here, I guess they're saying you need to support your kids' learning, but it doesn't need to take a lot of time and effort. So if we put in the word like a lot instead of inordinate amount, so a big amount, we could even use the word big, a lot. That's kind of the idea here. The author is reassuring the parents, just a little bit of discussion or some things around the house can really help. So it doesn't need a lot of time and effort. So let's look for something that goes with a lot. So it doesn't need to take a disorganized time and effort. No, is that similar to a lot? Incompetent. Incompetent means we can't do something. So no. Sequential. So that's in like first, second, third. No, we don't see anything about sequential. It doesn't need to take a sequential. No, they don't talk about the order of doing things. It doesn't need to take an unreasonable. So is unreasonable the same as big? No, but it gets to the same idea that it doesn't need to take a super ridiculous. When we say unreasonable amount of time is like too much time or more time than a parent can be expected to spend teaching their child. Unreasonable would be like more time than you expect, considering you also have to make dinner and, take care of other children and work yourself. So unreasonable really works there because they're saying too much. It's not too much. So it's not an unreasonable amount of time and effort. So yeah, if it's possible, I think it's great for the vocabulary questions to first read the question, don't peek at the answers, go to the context, see what word you would substitute, even if it's a really simple word. Like I use the word a lot or big, and I use those, and then kind of see which is the most similar match. It's not always going to be the same. But, if we take a big, a lot versus disorganized, no, 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 no. Big, a lot versus incompetent, no. But big, a lot versus unreasonable, a huge amount, a ridiculous amount, that's the one that's the closest, even though it's not exactly the same. A student is assigned a report on Abraham Lincoln. Which of the following sources is the most credible? So this is a question about sources. If you enroll in our online TEAS 7 course, or if you're studying on your own, you can review sources, what's primary, secondary, tertiary. But also here we have to determine what's credible. So what's the most legitimate source we can use where we feel like we can trust the information? So let's take a look and talk about these options. First, the Academy Award-winning 2012 film Lincoln. So here some people might say, oh, it won an award. But in terms of writing about a historical figure, a movie will not necessarily be the best one. If you have more information about the movie, like the consultant on the movie was the grandchild of the person, and they used all these primary sources that came directly from the person, and they quoted from their speeches, which would also be primary source, maybe. But here just saying it's a movie, it's not relevant that it won an Academy Award because a lot of movies are fiction or fictionalized history and win awards. So no. An opinion piece on Lincoln's legacy in the New York Times. So again, New York Times is considered a well-established newspaper and a good source, but be careful, we have opinion piece. So it's someone's opinion. So someone could be writing and saying, I think that Lincoln was the worst president. But if you remember what we talked about with opinion, I think and worst is different for everyone. So that's an opinion. It's not a fact. And we want to try to find some facts here. Next is Wikipedia article detailing Lincoln's presidency. Okay, so Wikipedia, because we know Wikipedia, so we know that people can change Wikipedia and anyone can access. And things can be put into Wikipedia without a source, without a real citation. Sometimes it will be marked like citation needed, but this is not a good place, a resource that anyone can change without facts, no. So we're left with the 2009 biography, Abraham Lincoln, A Life by Michael Burlingame. So biography is a secondary source, but secondary sources can be very legitimate because they're based on primary sources. So someone who writes a biography of Lincoln, likely they're looking at his letters, his speeches, those are primary sources, and putting them all together into a secondary source. And if we look at biography in terms of being a genre, we know that's a nonfiction book. So compared to a movie, which is technically, fictionalized, this is a nonfiction book. It's a nonfiction genre of biography. And most biographies use primary sources to write about someone. So that's our most legitimate option there. Which of the following is not a primary source on Charles Darwin? So once again, a question on sources. When we talk about primary, it's directly from the person. So something that the person said or wrote, or their diaries or their letters, or something from direct contact with the person or directly from the person themselves. So Charles Darwin's field notes from his travels, okay, these are his notes. He wrote them. He made the observations. Even if someone, took them down and he was dictating the notes, that works too. That's primary. On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, well, that's a book that he wrote. He wrote it. It's a primary source. An online database of Charles Darwin's writings. He wrote his writings. That's a primary source. A blog post about Charles Darwin's contributions. So here this is about Charles Darwin, but it doesn't come from Charles Darwin because he was not alive at the time of blogs. So because it doesn't come from Charles Darwin, it's not a primary source. Read the passage below and answer the following question. Reports of unsafe equipment and environment. RIP Gym employees must always respond promptly and seriously to any customer report of a hazard in our equipment or facilities, even if the employee judges the complaint frivolous. Customers may not use rooms or equipment that have been reported unsafe until the following steps have been taken in order to confirm and/or resolve the problem. Number 1, place warning, out of order, or off-limits signs in the affected area or on the affected equipment as appropriate. Always follow this step first before handling paperwork or attempting to resolve the reported problem. 2, fill out a hazard complaint form. Include the name of the customer making the complaint and the exact wording of the problems being reported. 3, visually check the area or equipment in question to verify the problem. If the report appears to be accurate and a resolution is necessary, proceed to step 4. If the report appears to be inaccurate, consult the manager on duty. 4, determine whether you are qualified to correct the problem. Problems all employees are qualified to correct are listed on page 12 of the employee handbook. Employees who have not undergone training for equipment repair and maintenance must, then we trail off. Which of the following is the most likely source of this text? Okay. So in this case, we can look at the answer options. We have to look at the answer options before trying to find an answer in this text. So a user manual for a treadmill. Well, we do mention exercise equipment, but we don't specifically mention a treadmill, and it doesn't tell us how to use it, so no. An employee handbook? Well, yes. Besides the fact that we say page 12 of the employee handbook, there's also the indication it starts with RIP Gym employees must. And a handbook is like a guide or rules for employees. So if we start with RIP Gym employees must, then it's an employee handbook. Just to look at the others, a fitness magazine. Well, a fitness magazine is not going to have steps for employees of RIP Gym. That doesn't really make sense for a magazine. They might have an article like, 5 exercises to do to, tone your legs or whatever. And then we have an employment survey. So an employment survey, do we have anything about employee? Well, we have employees, but a survey would be questions like, do you prefer to work from home or at the office? 55% say this. So no, not a survey, employee handbook. RIP Gym employees must. The author most likely wrote this text to, so here we're kind of getting into the author's purpose. What type of text is this? To criticize the lax safety standards of RIP Gym. So do we see criticism here? Do we see any criticism in the text? RIP Gym employees must always respond promptly and seriously. So some people must say, they're writing that because in the past they didn't respond promptly and seriously. But no, we don't see any criticism. We just see, steps to follow. Persuade employees to report more unsafe situations. So do we see persuasive language? We see must, which is kind of like imperative strict language, may not be used. Well, we don't really see like it's important, you're not reporting enough. Another aspect about this answer choice, to persuade employees to report more, must always respond promptly and seriously to any customer report. So this is really talking about how they respond to customer reports, not about employees reporting something. So that's a key difference. Next, provide staff members with a procedure to follow. So yeah, providing staff members with a procedure. Procedure is all about order, about sequence. So step 1, step 2, step 3. So that works here. Yeah, we see a procedure. We see steps. Compare and contrast RIP Gym and its competitor. Well, we don't see the mention of any other gym. Compare and contrast would be if we say what's the same and what's different, but we don't see that here. So we're going to provide staff members with a procedure to follow. Which term best describes the structure of the section under the subheading Reports of Unsafe Equipment and Environments? So we have reports of unsafe equipment and environment, and then we have a small paragraph, and then we have a 1, a 2, a 3, 4, 3AB, 4A. So as I mentioned, sequence. These are steps in order, step 1, step 2. Let's just go over the different types of structures just so we review that. So this is really kind of text structure, writing structure type of question. So sequence, as I said, is steps. Description would be kind of like painting a picture. So if you say, oh, the park was all green and sunny that day, the trees were swaying in the breeze, the rabbits were jumping in the grass, that's painting a picture. We don't have that here. Cause and effect. We have this in a lot of types of texts. One I can think of is like a history textbook, like, oh, this person, I think someone assassinated the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And as a result, two countries went to war. And as a result, kind of an incident that has an effect. Compare contrast would be what I mentioned before. If we were saying what's similar and different about Rip Gym versus, Bicep Gym, I don't know. And you're comparing, oh, this one has more machines, but this one has a swimming pool. So we don't see that here. We have a sequence of steps in order. What is the difference between expository and technical writing? So here we're talking about kind of writing structure, kind of types of writing, I guess we would call it. This is something you can review. It's one of the lessons. We have some content in our TEAS 7 course online and in the app. So basically, if we're talking about expository and technical here, expository is a lot of like academic, informative writing. So like essays or textbooks. Technical writing, well, probably what we just saw, what to do when gym equipment is broken, or how to put your IKEA furniture together, or how to, use a machine at a factory, like the user's guide. So technical writing is very, very dry. It's definitely not storytelling. That would be like another narrative writing. So let's compare. Expository writing is always fiction, and technical writing is always nonfiction. Well, expository writing, if we talk about historical essays or textbooks, that's not fiction. That's meant to inform, so it should be nonfiction, actually. Cross that one out. Expository writing is often academic, and technical writing is usually practical. Yeah, good. So we said practical, like putting your furniture together, academic, like a history essay. The other thing I like about this answer, you'll see the first one I should have had my bells go off for the always. Here they say often and usually. So we're not saying 100% of something or 100% or always or never, because I do like to avoid those words. I won't say I always avoid them because that would be too strong to say, or I wouldn't say I never pick those answers, but I consider them carefully. So I like number 2. Expository writing is meant to persuade and technical writing is meant to inform. Well, no, persuasive writing is meant to persuade and expository writing is actually meant to inform. So they're kind of mixing things up. Expository writing is dry and impersonal, and technical writing is often entertaining. Well, you could decide what you want about a history type essay being dry and impersonal. Technical writing, what we just saw about how to, mark off the gym equipment is not entertaining. Entertaining, of course, is a subjective term, but when we talk about entertaining in the context of writing for the purposes of this test, we mean there's a story, there's different events, there's a twist, there's humor, there's characters, something like a storytelling type of thing. So we're going to go with number 2. Which of the following is an example of expository writing? So that's the first one we're looking at: a user manual, a history book, an op-ed article, an autobiography. So a review here of some kind of genres of writing. User manual we talked about is very technical. History book we talked about, that is expository writing. So yes, more academic, informative writing, that's expository. If we look at op-ed, so an op-ed article is called I think it's opposite the editorial page. And what it really is an opinion piece. It used to be in the newspaper, now it's more online. But if someone writes online in their blog or in a newspaper, like opinion, whatever, candy should not be sold near schools. I don't know, whatever. Maybe it's a dentist writing about something like that. But that's their opinion. So if we look at expository writing, that's really about informing people using facts or history or statistics or something. That's different than expressing your opinion, because that difference between fact and opinion is important. Then autobiography. So autobiography is when you're writing about yourself. So it's a type of nonfiction where you tell your own story. So comparing that to something academic, autobiography is often more subjective. So we don't always consider that as, academic or informative as expository writing. So we're going to go with history book. Read the passage below and answer the following question. Overworked public school teachers are required by law to spend extra time implementing individual educational plans for students with learning and attention challenges. This shortchanges children who are actually engaged in their education by depriving them of an equal amount of individualized attention. What assumption behind this passage reflects negative stereotypical thinking? So, once again, we're talking about assumption, not something the author writes in so many words, but something we kind of get the impression that they feel because of what they say. So, public school teachers are generally overworked and underpaid. Well, first of all, just looking at the question and answer without even going back, is this a negative stereotype? I mean, I think people who say, "Oh, I work too much and I should be paid more," that's actually kind of a, that's not really negative. "Oh, I'm not paid enough." If you say they're paid too much, that's negative. So yeah, I wouldn't say that's a negative stereotype. That's more like the reality of the situation, I guess, overworked public school teachers. Next, students with learning disabilities are not engaged in their education. So yeah, I think this is really important because if you want to highlight what you find, this shortchanges children who are actually engaged in their education. So first they mention students with learning and attention challenges, then they talk about other children being actually engaged in their education. And using that word actually and kind of assuming that children without these challenges are more engaged, that's a negative stereotype because they're kind of putting everyone in one box, saying, students with these learning challenges, they're not engaged, but the others actually are engaged. It's really generalizing. It's not based on any reality. It's not based on any statistics, and it's a negative thing to say that some people don't care about their education. Laws require teachers to provide accommodations to certain students. Well, that's just a fact. They're saying required by law to implement these plans. So just the fact that the laws exist, that's not negative or positive. It's just a fact. Teachers have a finite amount of attention to divide between students. So yeah, I mean, this is also not negative. All human beings have a finite amount of attention. So that's just normal. It's not a negative stereotype there. So we're going to go with number 2. So same passage. The above argument is invalid because the author. So when we talk about an argument being valid, invalid, strong, weak, so we talk about, does the person have evidence? So that's where those supporting details come in. Do they have either facts or examples or anecdotes that support their position? Do they explain why they feel that way? And also kind of, are they biased in some way? If it's, a student who's a junior in high school writing, juniors in high school should all have half days on Fridays. Okay, well, depending on their argument, but why just juniors? Maybe because you are one. So some bias or some kind of negative stereotypes could come in as making an argument invalid because the person is not neutral or because the person is not informed. If we have, a dentist writing an article about, I don't know, fashion, what's their qualifications? What do they know about this? Why should we listen to their argument? That could, depending on how much you know about the text and the author, that could come into what is their expertise. So the above argument is invalid because the author suggests that some students do not need as much attention because they learn the material more quickly. Let's see. It deprives them of the amount of individualized attention. I don't know that they don't really talk about learning more quickly. They talk about being engaged or disengaged, which was a stereotype, but that's really more what they're comparing. Using belittling and disrespectful word choice to describe people who think, learn, and process information differently. So yeah, I mean, they're saying children who are actually engaged in their education. Yeah, so when they say that, they're automatically insulting the other group of students because they're basically saying these students are actually engaged, these students are not. So yeah, that is disrespectful. Describes public school teachers in a negative way that makes it seem as if they have no interest in helping students. No, I mean, they're saying they're overworked, but they're required by law to do certain things. So I don't really see, negative things. They're saying they're overworked, so they work hard, but that's not negative. Professes an interest in equality for all students while simultaneously suggesting some students are more worthy than others. Let's see. Yeah, they don't, let's see, deprives them of an equal amount of individualized attention. Yeah, they're not too focused on the equality here. Let's see, more worthy than others. Hmm. I guess they're kind of saying some students were more engaged than others, but they don't necessarily. Yeah, this is not. It's not the clearest answer for me, and they're more talking about the teacher's limited. They're more talking about the teacher's limited time compared to the equality for students. So I go with number two because they indicate it's really connected to the other question that they indicate certain students are not engaged in their education. And they don't really say, oh, we're for equality for all students. They say equal amount of individualized attention, but that doesn't necessarily mean equality for all students. Look at the following diagram and answer the following question. Okay, we've got our diagram here. What is the small root-like part of the neuron on the top right called? Fill in the blank. So interesting. So we have a fill in the blank. So we need to write in our own answer. So, reading section or on the T's, you need to be prepared for, as I said, different types of passages, different question formats. So we want something small and root-like on the top right. Okay, already top right. And this looks like roots and it's small, it's thin. So dendrite. I'm going to type in there, dendrite. So yeah, as I said before, some, especially with the graphics or the charts, some questions in the reading section are just about locating information, and that's what it's about. So it's about reading the question carefully and looking at your graphic or your chart carefully. What question can be answered by consulting this diagram? So another thing they're testing here is, while they're practically testing a diagram, the reading section may test some different formats. For example, a diagram here is more about the layout of where things are, where they're positioned. There could be other charts, like a flow chart is about sequence, which steps happen first. A bar graph is about different amounts, comparing them, the average salary in different countries. And then a pie chart, perhaps you could see, is a whole divided up into parts. What percentage of the first grade class has lost one tooth or two teeth, and then the whole together is the whole class, the whole number of students. So in this case, we have a diagram. It's about the location and positioning of things. Which question can be answered by consulting this diagram? Why does the brain contain neurons? Well, no, we can't answer that. Diagram is about the position of things, not why. Where is the nucleus located? Okay, where is the nucleus located? Yes, I see where it is. And diagrams are about location. What is the function of a myelin sheath? So I see that, you could take a guess, but the diagram doesn't tell us the function. And how does a neuron interact with other cells? We don't know from this. If we just have this diagram and we have to focus on what they give us, we don't know. So we just know where the nucleus is located. The bar graph, okay, I mentioned bar graph, another type of graphic. The bar graph below provides information about book sales for The Cummings, the first book in a trilogy. Study the image and answer the following question. Which type of book has sold the most copies? So because this is like a fine, locate the information question, that's a little bit mathematical, it has numbers, I'm going to look for the answer before I go to the option. So which type has sold the most copies? So these are the types: paperback, hardcover, ebook, audio. Well, paperback is the highest, 30,000. So paperback. Okay, I found it. It's one of the answer options. That's great news. The marketing director for The Cummings wants to use a different strategy for publishing book number 2 in the series. Which argument does the bar graph best support? Okay, so now we have to, kind of take it a step further to analysis. So let's look at our options. The first book in the trilogy has only sold 10,000 copies. So is that true? So this is the book 1. This is actually all the same book. It's just in different formats. So already, the hardcover is 10,000, the audio is 10,000, that's 20,000 plus another 20,000, 40,000 plus another 30,000. So the first argument is not even true. The first book has sold much more than 10,000. So cross that one out. The second book in the trilogy should not be released in hardcover. So let's look at hardcover. What do we know about hardcover? Well, it's one of the least popular formats. So there's an argument there. You could say, well, it's one of the least popular formats, so maybe it's not necessary to release that. Number 3, the second book in the trilogy should only be released as an ebook. So ebook, yeah. So we see ebook, it's the second most popular format. But if we only released as an ebook, we would be cutting out the most popular format, which is paperback. So I wouldn't recommend this. Next, the second and third books in the trilogy should be combined into one. We just have a chart about book 1. We don't know anything about second and third in terms of the plot or, the story or the character. So we can't draw that conclusion from this graph. But we could justify and say it should not be released in hardcover because hardcover is one of the least popular formats. So we could justify that way. All right. So we've actually finished our test section here. So we're done with this. I won't show my score because I keep taking and retaking because there's a timer. So that's a great thing to remember. We do have a timed free practice test. The link is in the description below. We have timed free practice tests for all the sections of the exam, so you can really prepare for your TEAS 7. Thank you so much for following along with me. Be sure to follow our YouTube channel. Be sure to give this video a like, and then head on over to smartadditionacademy.com and check out our different options. We'll be there with you every step of the way as you prepare for your TEAS 7 exam. So thanks so much and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.